All right, dude. You asked for a podcasting studio. We built one. What are you gonna do with it?
Well, as you can see by the sign behind us, this is going to be war stories. So this idea kind of came out of, a whole career of telling these types of stories, whether they're, at a bar with other pen testers, to friends and family who just are interested in information security, offensive security, the kind of stuff we do. And I think you could agree one of our favorite things is, telling more stories about some of the cool hacks we've done, cool physicals we've done, that type of stuff. So, what we wanted to do was find a way to kind of bring that to the world and tell people about, this another side of offensive security or security in general that people don't see a lot. So
we're definitely the most interesting people at the holiday parties when we go home for seeing our friends and family.
Yeah, I mean, with the kind of work we do, I mean, as well as I do, a lot of it's boring, but the highs are pretty high.
Yeah.
So, the other thing I kind of thought about too is I constantly get asked how, to get into this, how did you become a pen tester? How did you become a hacker? That type of thing. And again, I think those stories are pretty important to kind of, see how, people come to this type of career. So, the breakdown of the podcast that I have in mind is it's going to be 3 questions. It's going to be a different pen tester or offensive security professional every single week. Eventually, we might get into some blue team guys because that's obviously a very big, part of the story.
They've got cool stories.
They definitely do. But to start with, we're gonna talk to a different pen tester each week. You're gonna be my first victim, and we're gonna ask 3 questions. So the 3 questions for war stories is gonna be 1, how did you get to where you are today? What's your story? How'd you get into offensive security? How'd you become a pen tester? Number 2, what's your favorite tool and why? And hopefully maybe a story or 2 will come out of that. And then 3, kind of the big one is, what's the favorite story from your career? Every pen tester's got one, whether it's a crazy physical where they jumped a fence and ran from a guard, or, pulled off some sort of epic, red team type assessment where they were combining different social engineering techniques to break into, whatever. And we're going to, bring those stories to life. No client names, locations, names, slight details may be changed to protect anonymity, but, we'll get the good stuff out there.
Okay. All right, cool.
Sweet. So I guess, yeah, you're victim number 1, Matt Barnett, CEO, SEVN-X. I know you didn't start off as CEO, so why don't you give us a little backstory on how you got here, how you got into offensive security. I know you've got a interesting background before you kind of got into the tech stuff, so why don't we start there?
Yeah, I think everybody that comes into this world has a little bit of a sideways career path. Or, I don't know that anybody wakes up and says, I want to be a hacker that gets paid money from a company to hack. I think they all kind of fall into it.
People stumble into it. And At least back when we started, it was. I think nowadays there's people who definitely go to college and they're like, I want to be a pen tester. But I didn't know what pen testing was until I got my first job. And I think it probably was, you were in a similar position.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, I mean, depending on how far back you want to go, we could probably start at law enforcement. I kind of always wanted to be a police officer, and I went and did that. Unfortunately, I was in an accident, and ended up changing careers after the fact. But kind of spent some time as a fireman, spent some time as a paramedic. Surrounded by emergencies and catastrophes at all times. So, I tend to thrive really well in those high pressure crisis situations, and I ended up starting a job in IT. My first day, I was going to be a programmer. I was going to write PHP code and MySQL code. And the day I showed up for work, the head sysadmin put in his 2 weeks notice. And so
trial by fire.
Yeah. They kind of said, hey, listen, instead of that programming thing we thought we were going to have you do, we're just going to have you take over for the sysadmin because we need that more than we need, programming. And I said, okay, what do I have to do? They're like, well, you need to stick with that guy for the next 2 weeks, learn everything you can about Linux and all of our servers.
Oh, so they threw Linux at you too.
I had no idea what Linux was. If I'm being honest, back then I was like,
never hit a bash shell before?
No idea. What do you mean it doesn't have a window? Where's my mouse? Yeah. So I spent 2 weeks kind of learning everything there was. And then within a few months, they had been breached, and I ended up helping kind of navigate that and figuring out how it happened and how it couldn't happen again, and putting in a bunch of infrastructure, and really cut my teeth in that world at that job.
Got some real world IR experience right
right from the bat.
Yeah, sitting on the unfortunate side of the table, I guess, but probably gave you some valuable insight for the IR you do now.
Oh, 100, yeah, definitely. I mean, the thing is, I've always been in those high pressure crisis situations, and so this was just, same dog food, different label.
Sure.
But I found that after I got done hardening the servers and putting in a multi-factor VPN and changing all of these default passwords, that there wasn't much to do from a security perspective as a full-time job. And so I started looking around, seeing what else was out there, and eventually made my way to a security company, the place I was at before we started SEVNX, and partnered up with some really smart people. So
yeah, I think a few of them we're going to try and get on as guests eventually.
100%, we should. Yeah. So Dave Williams or John Beck, if you're listening to this, we're coming for you. But to those guys' credit, I was about as green. I thought I knew stuff when I showed up, and I realized just how little I actually knew. I think a lot of people they take it for granted that, you can be in security without having first cut your teeth in IT. It's in order to fix Windows, you have to understand Windows. In order to, compromise a VPN, you have to understand what a VPN is and how it works. And so, fast forward, I go on my first physical, which I didn't even know. I had no idea that physicals were even a part of cyber. And it's not a huge leap in logic once you really think about it. The amount of people that will come out and actually test physical security are few and far between. So what we end up finding is that people ask us about all of the application layer security, but they then ask you about the physical security. Is my data center strong enough? Is my lock good enough? Is my alarm system good enough? And so the way to test that is to try to break in the same way that we try to break into, the computers.
Sure. And you've really taken that and run with it.
I found that I have a niche in that world. I love it. I love the adrenaline rush that comes with it. It kind of harkens back to, everything about my past. And I've just genuinely enjoyed being really good at physical security. And all the people that I've connected with in the industry that kind of do that type of work, we all have the same mindset. It's the same hacker mindset that everybody has. It's just kind of geared towards the mechanical parts of physical security.
Sure.
How doors operate, how locks operate, how biometrics operate, how physical security rotations operate, badges, key cards, RFID, all that stuff. It's all still hacking, just, in the physical.
Different target, basically. Cool. So I think that pretty much brings us up to 7X. So question number 2 is, what's your favorite tool and why? And I'm curious if you're going to have a physical tool or a network-based tool for us.
Yeah, it could go either way. Can I break the rules and mention a group of tools rather than a single tool?
I think breaking the rules is okay for a hacking podcast.
Par for the course. Okay,
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, so when you're doing physical security, every job is different. Every building is different. They all have different special requirements. But there is a core, almost like a foundational set. It's the Kali Linux of physical testing, right? You bring in this core base OS, this base set of tools, and then you can build on based on, the needs of the job. So for me, I always carry a pack of shims, and then inside that pack of shims, I stuff a screwdriver, a pry bar, and a traveler's hook. And what I've found is that for most cases, and in almost all physicals, something in that is going to get me through at least one of the doors. Sometimes it's the main door, sometimes it's the server room door, sometimes it's just an interior door. But, most of the time, organizations do not have 100% of their doors configured correctly. There's a higher than not percentage that are faulty, either in, too low, too high, too wide, too skinny, too whatever.
Sure.
And the doors just don't lock and latch properly.
Bad tolerances, a bad lock.
Yep.
Something that's not configured quite correctly, which,
Yep. Drywall doesn't go all the way to the ceiling.
Sure.
Gap underneath. So, but that little pack that I always carry with me, and actually, you'll remember this.
I think I know where this is going.
So we were in Estonia earlier this year, and we were in a rental car. We had to get out of the rental car to get on a plane to France, and we were in a hurry. We were running late.
It's raining.
It was pouring rain, and I'd probably, I don't even know how many speeding tickets we got in that country. You know what?
Yeah, they were rolling in for a couple months. Multiple countries.
Yeah. I just got one the other day, actually.
From where?
Spain.
I'm not surprised.
But I did pay them. I paid all of them because I enjoyed Spain, and I plan to go back.
Want to be able to rent a car again.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I left my pack in the trunk of the rental car, and I was sad for many minutes.
You were very upset. I remember that.
Because one of the tools in there was something I got very early on in my fire department career. Right after 9/11, they had issued us all weapons of mass destruction, like toolkits. Basically, it was like a Tyvek suit, a bunch of entry tools, a bunch of gas masks and canisters and all this stuff. And all of it expired or went to waste except for that set of entry tools. And I'd never seen another pen tester that had them, but it got me into so many places. And so...
Yeah, and I remember you'd even you were particularly upset because you'd even filed it down and made it slightly smaller so it could fit into doors better.
Over time, just use after use after use.
It was broken in, I guess.
Yeah, like a pair of shoes. So it was definitely a hit to lose that, and I was pretty bummed.
Yeah, I remember you were upset.
Yeah, but I called the rental car company, and nobody spoke English, and I didn't speak Russian, Estonian, or any other dialect. So they were lost, but we've since replaced them, and I think when I bought my set, I bought a set for everybody here.
Cool.
So yours are sitting on your desk.
Okay. Yeah, I'm excited to check it out. Thanks, buddy. Are we moving on to the next question?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we're there.
Cool. So that brings us to our final question for the War Stories format. What's your favorite or one of your most memorable, I guess, stories from your career? Because I know you have a lot.
Favorite war story?
I think you got to give us probably a physical security one after that intro, and that really is your specialty. Yeah. But I know you have a lot of them to pick from.
Favorite war story? Okay. All right, I got a good one. So, long time ago, I was working with Tolly, and he's one of our best pen testers in the office here, but he is not a physical security guy by any stretch of the imagination.
No, he definitely prefers being in front of the keyboard, which he's really good at.
Very good at it, and certainly much better than me, right? And so he'll stay there, and I'll stay here. But when his job requires me, I get the phone call. So I get this phone call.
I do the same thing, by the way. Before you guys acquired me and got me into SEVNX, whenever I had a physical come up, I usually would try and get you to come out for a day or two with me.
We had some fun. We've traveled the country.
We definitely did, yeah. Did some good ones.
We'll come back and we'll talk about a few more of those. So Tolly calls me up. He says, hey, I've got this university I've got to do. Can you help? Well, of course, Tolly, I got you. So we go there. During the day, it's wide open, but it's staffed, and nobody's going to let you just walk into the data center piece, but you can walk into the building. And so I'm wandering the halls, and I see the IT room. And right as somebody's walking out, they're walking down the hall away from me, the door is just impossibly slow to close. And so I had all the time in the world. I go up, I stick my hand in the door, I catch it right before it closes, and there's nobody in the office. So I'm walking around, I'm looking at laptops, I'm grabbing passwords off of sticky notes, and I grabbed a set of keys to one of the vans outside. And the other thing the getaway car, exactly. The one thing that I grabbed that served me really well was a t-shirt or a polo shirt from the university. And it was specifically for the IT department. And I took it, I went into the bathroom and I put it on, and I grabbed my backpack and I went up to the break room and I just sat there and I waited for everybody to leave. So 5 o'clock comes, I look around, everybody, it seems like everybody's gone. Call Tolly up. I said, dude, I think everybody's gone. Come around to the side door, I'll let you in. So I let him in. We start working our way towards the data center, and we realize that somebody's still in there. And what we know now, but we didn't know then, was that data center was staffed 24/7.
Makes it a little tricky to get into the data center when there's someone there all the time.
Yeah. Who's at a data center 24/7, especially at a school, right?
Yeah.
So we had no idea that was actually going to be a thing. And we were like, all right, let's just kill some time. We'll go upstairs into their, more formal IT department, and we'll just wander around and con boot a bunch of machines and grab creds while we're waiting. So it's cold. It's the middle of the winter. There's snow on the ground, and the woman that works in the data center, and she's the night shift, so she's there all night. Again, we had no idea. She decides to take a walk. And normally she walks outside, but because it's cold and snowy, she walks around the IT floor, which is a huge footprint on the second story.
Sure, big wide open room, tons of cubes.
Might as well just painted a track on the ground,
Okay.
So she comes up to do her lap, and Tali's working at a computer, and she comes around the corner and she sees him working in the dark. Now, Tali is 6'4", Ukrainian, and wearing a hoodie.
Sticks out a little bit late at night.
He doesn't blend.
Yeah.
So she's like, what are you doing here? Now, fortunately, Tali looks young, and so he gets away with the I'm an intern excuse. And she's like, well, you can't be here. And he's like, okay, I'm sorry. And he leaves. And he calls me and he says, hey, I got kicked out. And I said, Tali, I know you got kicked out. I heard the whole thing. He goes, all right, well, we're going home. I'm like, we're not going home. I'm letting you back in. So he comes back to the side door. I let him back in. We go back up to the IT floor and we continue to rummage around. Well, fast forward about a half an hour, and Tali comes around the corner of the cubicles right as she's coming up the stairs, and the two of them run into each other again.
Oh, gosh. I can only imagine how, say, traumatic that probably was for Tali.
Mm-hmm. And I think they scared each other enough that they both yelled. And so I'm not sure which shriek came from who, but they both definitely screamed. And she was like, what are you doing here? I told you to get out. And he's like, I left something. And she's like, you have to leave. You cannot be in here. So she escorts him out a second time. So he calls me. He's like, dude, we got to go. I'm like, we're not done yet.
Want to get in that data center.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly.
I've been in these shoes before too, where you just won't quit. And it's like 2 a.m. and I want to go home. And you're like, one more thing. Mm-hmm. One more thing. I'm like, come on, man.
Yeah. You don't quit.
It's probably why it's why you're good at it though.
Yeah. You don't quit when you're tired. You quit when you're done. So, I'm like, I'm coming back to let you in. Well, this time, I think she either looked at the cameras or she did something. She knew that we were still in there, and she called campus police. Now, the thing about this building is that it is the heartbeat of the entire university. It handles everything from payroll to infrastructure to God knows what. And even the police department doesn't have keys to this building. So when they got there, she had to go let them in. And the first cop arrives, he's by himself. I hear and see the lights, and the sirens outside.
See, at this point, I would have probably given up and been like, oh crap, the cops are here. But
yeah, that's what Tali
guessing
wanted.
that is
That's what Tali wanted to do.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So I was like, dude, we got to hide. And so I drag him down to the end of the building, and I'm looking for a place to stash him. And between these two cubicles, there's a gap, and it's no wider than, it's probably like this, but he's tall and lanky. So I'm like, get in there. And I shove him into this crack between two cubicles, and directly across the aisle, there's a desk, and I crawl under the desk and I'm hiding. So he can see me and I can see him from basically across the aisle. And the cop comes in, they find my backpack in a conference room. And this backpack is like a hacker treasure
filled
chest.
with burglary tools.
Everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a phone with Kali Net Hunter on it. We had an under the door tool. We had compressed air. Just every bag of tricks, lock picks, the whole nine. And so they're looking through this bag and they realize, somebody's up to no good. And the cop starts clearing the upstairs. So he's got his flashlight out, he's got his gun out, and he is just kind of, working.
Probably say too that this is pre-coal fire incident.
This was, yeah.
Which, not to call them out, but I think a lot of people know about that whole incident and kind of changed the way some of us approach these things. It used to be a little more Wild West back in the day.
Coal fire, God bless them, because I can't imagine. Two of their guys spent a weekend in jail over physical testing, and they it wasn't their fault. They, 100% were caught up in the political nonsense between a state and a local jurisdiction. And
yeah, rough situation all around.
Yeah. But fundamentally, they changed the game for us.
They really did. Yeah. And that's kind of, I wouldn't dream of doing that kind of stuff these days. But
No.
like I said, back when I started too, we did all sorts of wild stuff you'd probably think twice about now.
Yeah, no, I mean, the extent to which I will push has come down a little bit.
Usually flashing lights is when the get out of jail free card comes out.
Yeah. So what I didn't know then that I know now, and the cops told us this at the end, was that the canine had just gone off duty. So 45 minutes sooner, and we would have been dog meat. No ifs, ands, or buts. But anyway, so Tolly's shoved in the corner. I'm under the desk. Cops clearing the room. Flashlight is just panning across the cubicles, and you can see it. You can see it kind of illuminating the ceiling tiles. And right as the light goes past the first cubicle, hits Tolly in the eyes, goes to the second cubicle, it like snaps back to Tolly. And he just has this panic-stricken look on his face. So the cop starts yelling at him, get on the ground, don't move, put your hands on it. And he's like, yeah, I don't know what you want me to do. Right. So the guy goes over, he grabs Tolly, puts him on the ground and starts cuffing him. And all the while, Tolly's like looking across at me. I'm looking at him, and then the cop looks over to see what he's looking at and sees me. And I'm just, I don't know what to do, right? I don't want to make his life more difficult, but if I move, right, he's probably just going to shoot me. So I'm like, I'm not moving. He's like, you stay there. I'm like, I already said I'm staying here. So by that time, additional cops had showed up, and the woman from the data center had gone down to let them in. And so they came up, and Tolly and I are both wearing jewelry. And by that, I mean police handcuffs. And we're like, hey, we're supposed to be here. We have a letter. And our authorization letter actually had, I believe it had the chief of police as like the backup contact.
So was he in the loop?
Apparently he was, and never told anybody downstream. So he went home for the night, and nobody knew that this testing was supposed to happen.
Oh, man.
Long story short.
That could have went bad in a number of different ways.
A lot of ways.
Yeah.
We got very, very lucky. The cops were very cool. We chatted with them about, post job retirement. They're like, this is the coolest job ever. I was like, yeah, we know. You should join us. But
that's the one nice thing about when you do get caught in a tense situation. Usually when the get out of jail free card comes out and everybody realizes it's legit, then people are typically really nice, and they're usually pretty happy that they got you. So it's kind of easy to be like, you got us, you win. Mm-hmm. And then people calm down pretty quickly.
Yeah. So I wish I had a better story about how we actually got to the crown jewels and how everything worked out great for the pen testers. But this one worked out pretty well for the university, and all's well that ends well. Everybody went home safe, and it was a great exercise, and a lot of things were learned out of it. So
cool. Awesome. Well, I think it was a good story to kick us off. So yeah, episode 1 of War Stories. Keep an eye out. There's going to be plenty more where that came from. New testers, new stories, and we'll continue to show you another side of cybersecurity.
Yeah, we didn't build this studio just for one episode.
No, did not. Cool. Thanks for being here, man.
Yeah, thanks. Dad.
Thanks for the help with the studio.
Yeah, enjoy it.
Cool. Thanks.
That's it.